Yeah, and to some extent, the pipe organ is timeless.
Yep.
Whereas the electric guitar it's more new.
And I'm here today with an old friend of mine, not old, but a friend of mine by the name of Father Brendan Lee. How are you, Father?
Very good. James, how are you?
Good.
And then there's just sort of an aspect that you really can't put your finger on it. You know, you'd say that a guitar is a more secular instrument. As with the drums, you see if you play guitar and drums at Mass, people start tapping their foot and, you know, that sort of thing. And you sort of think it's appealing more to the body than the soul. But the Mass is really aimed at the soul, not so much the body.
I got nothing against those instruments, but I just don't think it really has a place.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
I mean,
and for you, like you love secular music, right?
I do. To my shame, I like secular music. Perhaps, well, definitely, I listen to it more in the car than I ever would to organ and pipe music and church music. But it's a matter of time and place.
Yeah.
Everything's about time and place, isn't it? And in particular with liturgy.
I'm going to say something controversial now as well. In the Diocese, and I see photos of like school masses, especially at the cathedral. A very beautiful pipe organ at the back of the church, and you know, it's not used, and you see guitars at the front of the church and microphones at the front. I just don't understand it. I don't understand like why we're not promoting or using these instruments which are there.
Well, I think, and again, I've got to be careful what I say too, and I don't want to be too controversial here. But that has been my experience in one parish after the next. The organ tends to be behind, and gets behind what's already happening. People are already praying, and they want to stay out of the way. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be the centre of attention. Whereas with the guitars and the tambourines and that sort of thing, they really do want to dominate, and they find their way into the front.
Yeah. See, I think if the schools, and they go to school masses, and just getting younger people into the church, if they actually heard the organ being played, they'd be fascinated by it. Not just on a spiritual level, but like a musical level.
Well, you see that in film, don't you? Like and Hollywood.
We were talking about today, like if a church scene comes on, you don't hear guitars.
No, play pipe.
You've got the pipe
organ in the background. Yeah.
Like, why is that? Because that's just...
It's how people relate it. It's like a little bit like with priests. You say whenever they show a priest in a film, he's got a collar on. Though most priests today, for whatever reason, they don't wear collars.
Yeah.
You know, there's something that people who only know bits and pieces of the church, they can relate to. And to some extent, that helps draw them back in.
If you were wearing shorts and just a casual shirt, you're a priest, would people believe you on the street?
They'd never find you. They could never ask you questions. They could never ask you for a blessing or a confession, or even the more controversial questions they want to ask. You blend in with the crowd to some extent. You hide. You know, you sort of. I don't want to go as far to say you deny Christ, but you know.
Deny me in front of what's the
Jesus said, "If you deny me before men, I will deny you before my Father in heaven." I don't want to go that far as to say that, but it's about sort of coming to the forefront, and people relate the collar to the priesthood, not t-shirt and shorts or casual clothes. In the same vein, the unchurched or the sort of semi-churched, they would make more of a connection with the pipe organ to the church than to guitars and that. And again, I think the argument that this pop music is going to bring people back to the church, that is been thoroughly disproven for decades now, because we've had secular music in church for decades and it hasn't brought people back.
And they're playing it now. Are the younger generation coming to church?
No, really just the ones who are playing the music. And this gets back to a point I was making a few minutes ago, saying that you got to be careful not to turn the music into your church not to turn your parish into a
concert hall,
even more a conservatorium or a nursery where you're sort of bringing musicians up through the ranks. That's not really the job of the church. It might be the job of the local Catholic school or whatever they want to do there. But I think Mass is really first and foremost about giving glory to God. And that it might be nice for the mothers of those children to hear their children get up and
do something,
and sing something like, at a 7-year-old's voice. But some of the more older people with a more mature relationship with God, they can find that taxing, grinding, especially when you've got people in the congregation who are very accomplished in their ability to play music, and they sit aside and they sit it out to let the younger ones have a go. So Mass is not about giving the younger kids a go.
Yeah.
It's about giving glory to God. That's first and foremost. And if we can
you want to
do
give
that,
the best possible.
Yeah, you want to do your absolute best. Yeah, and also see it's part of a real. It's controversial and offensive to some people, but so abundantly clear that we're sort of getting slacker in our approach. So look at how when people get to Mass, you start Mass and half the congregation are not there, and they wander on in, and then the way they're dressed is, and people say, well, at least they're there. We've got to stop thinking at least. We should really be sort of encouraging people at most. What can I do at most? And it'll actually help them in their faith. If you give your people lowest common denominator sort of stuff, they'll aim for the lowest. It's a race to the bottom.
What are we talking about? Like, I don't know if I was talking to you about it, but people who go to Mass on Sundays, why aren't people dressing up the best? Why aren't people dressing up like they're visiting the King?
Yeah.
Why are we dressing up like shorts and t-shirt?
Well, I think well, it's like people dress as if they're just going up to Woolworths to buy a bottle of milk. It's the same outfit, you know what I mean? Why do we dress the way we do when we go to Woolworths to get a bottle of milk? It's not a pleasant trip. You do it because you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so you just wear your cheapest clothes. You want to make it as simple, straightforward, and clinical as possible.
You don't want to be caught.
You don't want to be seen. You're not there to talk to people. You're in. You just want to get in, get the milk, bottle of milk, and out. Let's get the job done. Unfortunately, a good number of Catholics now, they're treating Sunday Mass like that. Mm-hmm. It's, I'm going to get in, get the job done, and I'm going to get out. And they're dressing in the same way. And then they wonder why, 15 years later, they can't get their kids to go to Mass. It's like, it's not rocket science.
You have to deal with it at the time.
Yeah, once you get to the party, you're wearing a suit and tie or whatever, and everyone else is more casual, you can undo the tie. You can lose the jacket and undo the tie. But if you turn up in T-shirt and shorts, like I did at this particular barbecue, you just feel half naked.
You want to go home.
You want to go home. So clothes do matter, and you know that for a fact. If you go to a wedding, people really dress up for a wedding. They, to some extent, it's sort of dissipating, but people still, to some extent, dress up for funerals. And when young people go out, that's probably the best example. They dress up to the nines.
Why do people dress up to the nines when they go out?
Well, because they're trying to impress. They're there for a mission.
We're not trying to impress anyone at Woolworths.
That's right, yeah. And again, that would be that Mass is starting to be started. It's well and truly along this way where for many Catholics now it's become functional. Mm-hmm. And then if they can convince themselves that really I don't really need to get that bottle of Mass on Sunday,
isn't
they'll find a way out of it.
Quote or a saying, get dressed in your Sunday best?
Yeah, there was that sort of understanding that there was such a thing as a Sunday best, which is totally lost on your generation, really lost on my generation as well. We all know the expression.
Yeah.
But the Sunday best doesn't exist.
Sunday best is shorts and t-shirt now.
Yeah, and again, we're probably so desperate for numbers these days. We say, "Oh, well, come as you are." As long as they're coming, at least.
Like, come as you are.
Well, it doesn't really make any sense. Say, "Come as you are." Yeah, that's great.
That's how I want to. Is that what it says?
Well, it's how it goes on.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of communism in a way. I'm not saying it's a communist song in any way, shape, or form. But you say, you like the idea of communism, right? That everybody owns things equally. You say, okay, how are you going to pull that off?
Yeah.
You say, well, the rich have got to give up their assets or some of their assets and redistribute it to the poor. You say, what about the rich who don't want to? How are you going to get that money and that property and those assets out of their hands? And that's usually where communism goes awry. If come as you are sounds great when it begins, and then it kind of dissipates into other lines. I forget them now because I never sing it. I never have it at my masses, and when it is at my masses, I kind of block it out. No, I really don't have much more. I've already said more than I ever thought I was going to say on this thing. So thank you for
talking about it. And
no, it's an interesting subject. You've got to be careful. I hope I haven't said already too much, but music in the church.
This will be edited.
Yeah, I hope it's seriously edited.
PG-13.
Yeah. No, but again, music's such a controversial point in the church. It's like there's not total agreement with it, is it? And how the story's going to end.